Okay, now let's do the third one. So this one is pretty exciting because it's a special shape. It's a custom shape. And if you go to your shape tool over here, you'll see Photoshop's custom shape tool. I love this. So if you look at the top here, click on this arrow, you might see a list of loads of interesting shapes, very cute, and lots of folders and categories. Now feel free to choose any shape you like. It doesn't have to be this flower, but I'm going to go ahead and choose this flower by going to the flowers folder. I'm going to select this flower, it's this one, and I'm going to click and drag. Now to not get it super distorted, you can hold down the shift key again, just like for the circle, and it will be a nice undistorted flower, and you can let go. And again, you will see the layer. This time it's shape 42. So let's place an image. So now we can go back to File, Place Embedded, and select Winter Cabin, and Place, and you know the drill, resize. And now we're going to do our little clipping mouse trick. We hover in between the layers. We hold down the Alt key until we see the square and the arrow, and then we click. Brilliant. Okay, now what if you wanted to move this cabin, the image, just a little bit higher, but you want the flower to stay put? Absolutely fine. You just have to go to the Move tool. You have to make sure that what is selected is your image. And then you can either click and drag and move it around, or I love using arrows on my keyboard to put it up and down. Kind of reminds me of like PlayStations and video games. Okay, what if I wanted to resize this cabin, make it bigger or smaller? Then I would have to make sure, again, always make sure it's selected. And then you go to Edit, Free Transform again. So Free Transform is how you resize any shape, any image in Photoshop. Then you see the bounding box and you can just click and drag and resize it. Great. Now when you're done, you can just go back to the Move tool and it will place it. Let's resize the others, just for practice. So if you wanted to resize this image, just click on it. You will see it will be selected over here. And you can go up and down or click and drag. And for resizing it, Edit, Free Transform, and click and drag. And when you're done, the Move tool. Now this is great, but what if you wanted to resize the whole shape as well as the image together, or move it? Then what you would have to do is, instead of just selecting the image, you would have to select the image and the shape. So let's click on this image again. You'll see it's highlighted here. Now the shape here, ellipse 5, is this shape. So if we wanted to select both, we just have to hold down the Shift key, click on this one, hold down the Shift key, click on the shape it is in, and now they're both selected, which means that you can move both all together. Great. Now let's add this little shape here. So let's go back to our custom shape tool, and our flower should be selected, but it needs to be black. So if you wanted to make it black, you can either click here in your swatches, it will become black, or in your fill. Either way, absolutely fine. And again, you hold down the Shift key and you have your little flower. Now remember, you always go back to the Move tool as a default, and you can move it. Okay, super. Now we're going to learn how to add the text in. And you might learn a thing or two about layers as well, because what we'll start with is the text layer. Now in terms of layers, so when a layer is at the top, it means that it's in front or it's closest to you. when a layer is at the bottom, it means that it's further away from you and it's at the back. So we'll look at that a little bit more in a bit. Now let's start with the text. So I'm using a font called Railway here. Sorry, a little bit hard to pronounce the R for me. And if you do not have this font, do not worry because I have placed it in our folder. So if we can minimize Photoshop for a minute, go back to our folder, you'll see a folder called Fonts. Double click and you'll see all the different versions of Railway. Now, if you wanted to download it, what you would have to do is double click on it and click on Install Font. Now, if you could do that for each of these, then you will have the font needed for this exercise. So let's go back to Photoshop now and let's start adding the text. So I would like us to go to the type tool. So when you start creating text, you always go to the type tool. Now what you need to do is make sure that your top layer is selected so that our text layer will go above all our other layers. And then you can click and drag. And I think that was a little bit too big, but that's fine. We can change that later. And you can start typing winter. Now, that font might automatically already be correct. And if it's not, let me show you how to make it correct, how to make it consistent with this one. So when working with text, if you want to select your text, you can click and drag, or you can go to select all or Command or Control A, and this will select all the content in your frame. Okay, now to change the font settings, you can change them over here, but you can also change them here in the Properties panel. And here you'll see different types of fonts that you can choose, whether you want it in bold, regular, italic. This is for the font size, so you can increase the font size this way or decrease it. I have a little trick that I want you to use. So if you highlight this little value box, you can press the up or down key on your keyboard, and this will increase the value in a very quick way. Now, if you scroll down, you can change some other settings like the color. And obviously we need to make this color white. And it does look white currently, but that's not the preview. So if you look at the color here, we need to make it white. You can either click on white here and it will be white, the most corner, and okay. And you can also change things like the alignment and stuff like that. We just need to line it to the center. And to make it all caps, it's this bit here. Scroll down and you'll see your all caps, and always hover over icons. They will tell you what they are. Okay, super. Now we have this text, but we can't see it, which is absolutely fine because we know it's there. So actually, why don't we make this another color for now? So if you click on the color here, we have another color for now. It will be easier to differentiate. Super, now we need to create a second text frame. So we need to go back to the Move tool to deselect it, go back to the Type tool and click and drag a text frame. And now it should be the same format as the previous one. So we're not going to have to format the whole text again, which is nice. And if not, just go back and you know what to do. So now type in clipping mask. And whoopsie, there's not enough space for my whole text. So what we need to do is click and drag, and you can actually elongate your text frame so that there is enough space. Now I do think that my font might be a little bit too big here. So if I highlight my text, go back to the font settings, I might be able to resize it, make it a little bit smaller. Go back to the Move tool and then go back to the Type tool to make this one just a little bit smaller. And back to the Move tool always. Super. Now we need to create those little rectangles. So if we go back to our shape tool, we can go to the rectangle tool and we'll see that our fill is that same color. So we can either click on the fill here, the color will change, or just click on this one, up to you. And we can start drawing our rectangle. Click and drag. And let's do another one. And I will explain in a minute why our text is disappearing. So I mentioned layers before, and I mentioned that when a layer is at the top, it's in front. And currently my rectangles are above the layers of my text. You can see T, clipping mouse, that's my text. So what we'll have to do is always go back to the move tool, is just move our rectangles below our text. And again, so that the rectangle appears below the text. Now the final touch is making our text white again. So what you can do is go to the type tool, you click in between, highlight your text, and click on white. And let's do the same. Back to the move tool, back to the type tool. Select your text and make it white. Back to the move tool. And there we go, we've completed our first one. Congratulations!